37th parallel on America's haunted highway, it's Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.
Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a very special episode of Pixelated Paranormal. This is a little sneak peek at our 7-year anniversary show with a very special listener story. With me, as always, of course, is Preston. Presto, buddy, how you doing?
What's up, all you cool ghosts and goblins, you crococoons and crocodingos and skeletors and skelettes? Your boy has been working out in the yard today, shoveling some dirt, playing in the manure, planting flowers and plants, and trying to make everybody happy around the household, and fucking tired and 5 margaritas in deep. So I'm good. I'm ready to party.
Babies.
Yeah.
Laxed and relaxed. Cool, man. Cool. Well, I just got through eating a couple slices of Chicago-style pizza, and I'm working on a little barrel-aged London ale, so I'm ready
I want
to
to talk about Alien, Sean.
Oh, look at you. So professional.
Me.
Now, this is not the full 7-year anniversary special, but a very special portion of it because with us we have Lazarus. We just started talking with Lazarus a couple weeks back, but anyhoozle, we thought it'd be cool to do a whole video chat, record that, and stream it. Lazarus, buddy, how are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you, Sean?
Good, man. I'm good. I'm rip roaring ready to go. So you talked to us a little bit through our chat on a recent episode that we streamed, and we were talking about listener stories and experiences, and we got onto the subject of mushrooms and color blindness, and Preston and I are both color deficient, and then you mentioned something pretty special here about alien abductions and DMT, man. So we're stoked that you want to talk about it. Why don't we just jump in, man?
Y'all want to know about the aliens and the DMT?
Yeah,
yes.
As you can tell by my accent, I am genetically predisposed to have terror of being abducted and raped by interstellar creatures. That seems to be something that happens to people like us. I had no expectation of meeting this, so I'm just going to jump into it. I smoked some DMT, and there I was in a cave. There was these beautiful cave paintings, and they all got kind of 3D and trippy, all acid trippy like. And one of them was a toad, and this thing like turns into a giant big ass toad. And I'm thinking, cool, man, because the last animal guy I met on this stuff, he told me some excellent wise things. But the problem was, as the toad goes to speak, there's this big black inky blob that kind of inks this little tendril down on me. And next thing I know, I am stuck up in a damn spaceship, strapped to a table. Jeez. And what was odd was it looked like just humans, had me on this table. So I'm having like all of my pre-programmed genetic fears, going into shock here as I see a extremely large-headed, much larger than your gray back there, ridiculously large head. I have no idea how the neck supported it, and he had very long mantis-y like hands, and one of which went straight down my throat. Which caused me to immediately snap up and, cold sweats and making sure my pants are still on and nothing else hurts.
Right. As one does.
but if the best I can describe is if you ever had an endoscopy, so you know how you can feel that for a while?
Yeah.
Imagine like feeling that without ever having an endoscopy.
Oh, man.
And that's that was kind of trippy. So that was the first alien I met on DMT against my will.
Right.
The second time, and this has been a few years ago. This is pre-COVID. And that's a lot of joints between then and now.
Right.
But there was long story short, on a series of a week-long DMT trip where I was doing it 2 or 3 times a day, solid for a whole, just to see what would happen. And I don't recommend it if you have to function in society because you could lose your mind.
Yeah.
But I was repeatedly bothered by the image of a figure that had wings and the head of a ram, kind of a human-like body, except he was gold. And for some reason, this guy kept grabbing me and messing up my dreams and my little DMT trip repeatedly. And this is where I get abducted by the next alien. So again, I'm sucked up in a spaceship, but this is like a normal gray, right? And it happens to be a gray that is actually the first gray, at least that I know of, recorded in American history. LOM, the ultra or preternatural intelligence, as Aleister Crowley referred to it, that he met up in New Hampshire before we had grays to depict and drew a very interesting depiction of a gray. If you're not familiar, you should definitely look up the picture of LOM.
Yeah.
So
at this
real,
point, you know,
real
Go
quick
ahead.
on that, that's interesting that you bring that up because our second episode of Aleister Crowley that we're going to do that talks about him going to China, making a messy Nessie in the Loch Ness, and it gets into LOM, and one of the guys talks about how if you take Aleister Crowley's original drawing and just stare at it and meditate on it, that you can actually invoke the deity that way. So I would be curious if
Can't
you took...
remember if that was Tyson or Grant. One or
Yeah.
the other. I can't remember which one, but it was one of them. That was their thing, and they chanted the name as a mantra. Never did it. Again, never really liked aliens. Yeah. Well, like as a kid, you know, I thought, you know, this is pretty cool till I realized it's just like the movie Oz, but you know, you can't run because you know these guys show up in your house and zap you out of bed. You know, but yeah, so I got to meet Long.
That's wild, man.
And he said, "Do you want to know where this dude come from? This guy that's been bothering me this whole week." And there was a few times I was like, "What happens if this guy kills me? Do I get stuck?" So he said, "This is where he's from," and he shows me this image that projects into my mind of this little like star and about 3 planets or bodies that are circling around it. And he said it's in the direction of Aries. Well, okay, cool. I ended up finding it. It's a real place.
Oh, wow.
And this was one of the more trippier parts because, you know, there's people can say what they want about DMT. It can be a great spiritual experience for some, but let's not go past the obvious that this is a chemical substance. And for all we know, it's all in our head. The problem was I had absolutely no astronomy in my head. Don't care about it. Again, there's aliens up there that rape people, or, you know, do stuff. I don't want to know nothing about it.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I didn't know about this really odd little planetary system inside of there, but it's called HIP 14810, I think. And that kind of freaked me out. I'm like, man, because there's like really a guy up there. So
just hanging out.
DMT, you know. But then Lom said, "Do you want to know what a gray is?" I'm thinking at this point, you know,
fuck it. Yeah. You're already down the rabbit hole, man.
he said, "This is a suit that we use to interact within space-time." And he starts to peel this thing away, and it looks like a bunch of little scallop shapes, like leaves, but not leaves, just like the outline going in all these different directions and holographic colors. And, you know, nothing you could really find anything on. And I don't know what's scary, you know, a kaleidoscope world where you but that was the aliens on the DMT.
Holy
I
shit.
did have a lot of weird poltergeist stuff happen around then. Like if I was talking about like something about it, the TV'd start skitzing. So I got a little
Huh.
paranoid from it.
Yeah.
Uh, but I never saw any machine elves or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, there's more studies I've got queued up in our list of topics and whatnot about DMT and the idea of like, the mechanical elves and other, ultra terrestrials and stuff like that. But I think what's interesting is how, like, you mentioned
Don't forget the dwarves.
the idea of like, right, yeah, and the dwarves as well. But what's interesting is the fact that you talk about like these aliens are something completely different, and the gray is just a suit that they put on to interact with people, because maybe that's like what we know of from the zeitgeist and pop culture. But it reminds me of an episode, I think it was called The Natural of the X-Files. I don't know if you ever saw the X-Files or not.
Yeah, man.
Okay. So yeah, this is the one where the guy, he's a baseball player. If I remember, I might get part of the facts wrong, but anywho, so somebody comes across the KKK, and one of the guys gets knocked off his horse, and they pull the hood off, and it's a black man. And then we find out later, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the episode, folks, he is a gray alien. And he lands on Earth. He sees the KKK, but the first person he encounters is a black man. So he's like, I'll disguise myself as a black man, kind of like the Krite hunters on the Critters movies. One of them's a rock star, one's a centerfold. So then further into the episode, the Gray's like, oh man, this guy's gonna freak out. I gotta turn into something else that he's gonna, be able to cope with. So he turns into like this blonde chick and sits on his lap. So I mean, there's tons of tales like that where these things are appearing as something that you can easily digest, or at least loosely wrap, your brain around to say, okay, at least I can put a finger on that. That's an alien. And it's a lot like that movie Communion. And have you read the book Communion from Whitley Strieber? So, or seen
Like
the
I
movie?
said, I try to avoid that stuff.
This is not your jam, right? Well, there's part of Communion where he talks about one of his first interactions with Grays. This thing shows up and it's got a big solid box for a body and little spindly like robot arms that are, again, kind of like 1960s robots, a big round head and like almost a sombrero type hat, and a round, emblem on his chest with like a spiral in it. And that's the first encounter he had, or at least the screen memory he had. And then as things go farther, then these things start revealing themselves. And there's a part of the deal in the film where he reaches up and touches one of their faces and pulls off like the jaw, and there's some kind of weird like fly or insect mouth kind of, protruding out and everything. And I think you're onto something there, man, because there's so many other stories about people saying they are one thing, but they are actually something else, and they're pretending to be something else. And there's even an episode of Coast to Coast where a dude calls in, and supposedly he worked for the government, and he's terrified about aliens, and he keeps talking about how like they're not from outer space, there's something else, and the call goes cold. So that's fucking
John
trippy.
Keel, man.
Yeah.
He
Yep.
was on to something way before his time.
Oh,
The
yeah,
idea of a more
Sam the
robotic
Sandown
kind of.
Clown.
Oh, yeah.
He
That's a wild one too.
He was very robotic and very out of place, but then
Yeah.
when you went inside his hobble, shanty house wood thing, and you got on the inside, it was like the TARDIS. The kids described something completely different. So it's like, and they described him different.
Yeah.
So once they got inside, everything changed. So it's like, for him to be able to interact, he had to appear like this wooden mannequin Pinocchio robot thing. But then once you got inside his realm, he was more lifelike and completely different, and his house on the inside was different, and that's mind-blowing. And then when the kids leave the house, it's like the house just zips out of reality and disappears. So it's like, did he take on the appearance of the clown to make himself more susceptible to the children, or is it because he needed like a suit to be able to interact, and that was the best thing he could come up with? Like, he's a poor ass interdimensional being, and that's the best that he could do.
I think the robot guys are just the government.
Yeah.
The Flatwoods monster always bothered me, even reading about the early reports about That was kind of, I mean, that's kind of cheesy robotics.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Redfern, I think, solved that. He found a old document that pretty well describes the Flatwood Monster as a psychological experiment. I
Sure.
think that totally has been solved.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Whitney could have had a similar experience growing up where he did certain things that may allegedly happen with
Mm-hmm.
children connected to the military. I think it's more likely that that was probably a robot and he may have
Yeah.
been under some altered state
Yeah.
against his will.
It's entirely possible. I love the story. I love the movie, immensely. But like the problem I always had with it is you've got somebody who's a creative writer who's writing, science fiction and stuff like that. Like I just picked up Wolfen, which I believe is the book that he was writing during when these events took place. That's the problem I have is you got a guy who says he's abducted by aliens. Sure. And then the problem is, then you have Communion, then you have God, what's it called? Transformation is the sequel book. And then you got another one and another one. And then the rabbit hole goes down farther where it's like, oh, and I was also part of like a secret school that kids got abducted to and taken in the middle of the night by the government. Oh, and this happened and that happened. And I
Look up
think
the GATE program.
yeah, I have. That's fascinating as well. Again, on the list of stuff to chat about once we kind of get into Communion and some other stuff. But that's the problem I have is like, I want to believe the first round of stuff happened to him. And then how much of that does your creative writing brain take hold of and just start boom, 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 and just going farther and farther and farther?
Well, especially childhood memories too.
Mm-hmm.
And if we take some of these things, how much were implanted memories,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time, what makes you not part of a conspiracy?
Sure.
How
Oh,
do we
hell yeah,
know you're
man.
not disinformation? So, I
Right.
mean, again, everything I say allegedly, but uh, I'm just saying, man, I've only seen aliens under the influence of some plant based substance.
Right,
I've
right.
seen some interesting objects in the sky in this part of the Ozarks for
Mm-hmm.
years with witnesses, but I've never seen anything that, I never seen some gray waving at me from the window. I've only ever seen that stuff on, drugs, basically.
Right, right.
So
My other
it's
friend who actually gave me the DMT, he
Mm-hmm.
says that the grays are basically in every DMT realm, every level, they're everywhere. He thinks
Mm-hmm.
they're like going around all the dimensions doing scientific experiments or something.
Sure. Yeah.
Not my explanation because I
Right.
don't even know if that shit's real.
Yeah. What were you
I
going to say,
think
Presto?
the connection to when you said plant based, right? So you've only encountered this phenomenon under a plant based substance. There was a guy back in the late 70s, early 80s, and I'm bad with facts, and so I'm not going to tell you his name because I can't remember it right now. But the gist of
Come
it
on, just
was
guess.
he was in South America and he was on the hunt for the great white mushroom. Like this was going to be his payday. This was going to be the mushroom that could outdo ayahuasca. This was this substance that other cultures in South America had talked about, and it was like this lost secret. And he was on the hunt for it. He was going to find it because he could make this
Mm-hmm.
special, power level 10 ayahuasca off this great white mushroom. And so he discovers it and starts experimenting with making like drinks and shit out of it and kind of go through these different rituals. And while he was under the influence, basically what he was told is kind of like contact with Jodie Foster, that to be able to get to the next level, technology wise, we're never going to get there in our current lifetime. Like it's just going to take generations
Mm-hmm.
and generations. And so to be able to catch civilizations up, that this advanced civilization, so this master civilization that's been around since the beginning of the universe, that they seeded information through genetics and they sent that out throughout outer space. And so as that genetic information hit Earth and started to grow, it just so happened that it took on the form of a mushroom because it's something that, monkeys, humans, that all these different creatures will eat. And as you eat it, it's passing on, how to build a time machine, how to build a spaceship, how to communicate interdimensionally. But then if you were to go to Mars, if something happened to land at Mars, it might be a grape, it might be a tomato. Like, you don't know how that spore is going to evolve. But each planet in the universe has the potential to have this genetic information seeded on it, and then we're able to communicate through that. So we always think of aliens and everything associated with it being flesh and blood, but the fact that here's this plant-based substance that could have been genetically encoded to give you this information, and all you have to do is just open yourself up to it. Just open the door, take a look, and fucking ride the wave.
Well, and that's what's interesting too about mushrooms and aliens are, it's believed that mushrooms and, I'm going to butcher the name, mycelium, just, the tendrils and the fibers and everything.
Mycelium.
Thank you. I knew I had it earlier when I was thinking
For the
about
record,
this.
I've never seen aliens on mushrooms. Just salvia and DMT.
Right. Well, the idea of mushrooms, they all are interconnected, kind of like a hive mind in a way, almost kind of the way, I don't know if you all watched Last of Us on HBO, but, those creatures were all connected by the tendrils of the mushrooms, and they shared a hive mind. And it's believed that to be the way it is with regular mushrooms in real life, too, that somehow they share a consciousness. So like you're saying, Presto, when you eat one, you're being bombarded by all this knowledge of like, maybe some other planet or some other history or whatever. And every time you eat it, you are eating that entire history's knowledge up to that point. And there's also, some studies saying there might be mushrooms on Mars. We talk about bacteria and stuff being found, and that's kind of the base of life. And, bacteria leads to fungus. And I mean, fungus is a living creature as well. So there's probably a lot more to be said there. More eloquently than I just did. But I mean, the grays are thought of to be these hive mind creatures as well. So I don't know. And biomechanic, made from plant matter as well. So it's definitely something we plan to dive into deeper as we go along. I mean, been doing this for 7 years, and that rabbit hole is deep, baby. And that paranormal highway is long. So we may have to do some deeper dives into this with you, Lazarus, and have you back on and chat some more, man. Because I mean, we just barely flicked the cap off of this thing with you. So
well, consider, what if that information has nothing to do with outer space? What do mushrooms come from? They're consuming what if they're just showing you the history of everything that's ever made up that dirt it's growing in?
Right, true. Yeah.
Doesn't
All the
have
dead
to be
matter.
outer space.
Yeah, very true. Holy shit, man. Right. It's definitely mind-blowing, man. Well, I promised you I'd show you mine if you showed me yours. So I've told this story a couple times on our show and other shows, but when I lived, when I was a kid, my grandma lived way out in the country, kind of in like a little town that was like maybe like 3 square miles, maybe even smaller. And I was at her house one night, and it was just she and I was having trouble falling asleep. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase this story, but all at once I started feeling like the air grew real dry and kind of static electricity feeling. And I looked up at the ceiling fan, and I kind of almost got this weird sleep paralysis feeling. And then I remember realizing I couldn't move anything, but like I can barely move my eyes. So I'm laying on my back on this inflatable mattress, and I look down, and all the way down through her house is a straight shot to this back door. And behind the back door in her yard was like a lamppost. And I remember looking out the window at this lamppost, and it starts flickering. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this gray, and I'm probably like 10 years old. I know what they are because of like X-Files and stuff like that. And I had a pretty, deep interest in them. But this gray appears at this back door, and it's looking at me through the window and through the curtains, like the break in the curtains. And I remember looking up at the ceiling fan, looking back down, and now this thing is on the other side of the door in the house. And then I'm like, oh God. And it's as still as can be, like a statue. I look up, look back down, and now it's like 3 feet closer, and it's in the kitchen. I look up, look down, it's at the doorway of the kitchen into her little living room. And then all of a sudden, it just makes a dead sprint for me, just boom, just comes flying at me. And I remember thinking, like, I got to protect my grandma. I don't know what's going on. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And finally, as I look down, it lunges like straight at me. And I managed to get my hands up and kind of cover my face. And I'm breathing heavy and I'm just waiting and nothing happens. And so, like, I pull my arms back and I look, there's nothing there except a bag of yarn in a plastic Walmart bag is going back and forth on this chair, this dining room chair. That thing hit that bag and caused it to swing back and forth. And as I'm looking down, you see it's still got a little bit of movement, like something hit it, and it's just finally slowly just straightening back out.
That's the only time I've ever heard of a grave running.
Yeah, right, right.
That's
Now,
interesting.
again, telling stories from our youth, maybe it just floated straight at me, but whatever it did, it's just bolting. I mean, just flying hyperspeed at me.
I'd have tripped him. Well, you had
right.
the boo hag holding you still. So.
right.
See, I was all with you up till I'm all right, this sounds like the boo hag. Yeah, I know what this is. And then there's like an alien at the lamppost, and now he's like sprinting towards us. That makes it so much worse.
It was fucking horrible. And I mean, never asked grandma about it. 10 years old, I don't want to talk to anybody, and especially my grandma, and make her think that I'm nuts. But it was something else, man, and it's something I never forgot. So, Presto, you haven't had any alien stuff, have you? I don't think we've talked about that. I don't remember it.
Negative. I've been alien free. Ghost shit,
DMT, man.
Yeah, left and right. So got to, just got to open that door. So, the float tanks. So if you go in a deprivation tank, that actually causes your brain to naturally release small amounts of DMT. And I've heard voices while being in a float tank, and then I felt like I was spinning in a vortex. But as far as actual like aliens and UFOs and spaceships, nope, nothing.
Yeah,
I seen a gray on binaural beats.
No kidding.
Yeah, I blacked out a room, and a silhouette of a gray started appearing, and I yanked the headphones out and turned the light on. That was the first, the first alien apparition. That was pre everything,
And the hell with that noise. So I don't know if you've ever watched the Newkirk's short series.
That
right. So you're familiar with Hellier then? Have you checked out Hellier 1 and 2?
Yeah, I loved it.
Hell yeah. So Shayla, I mean, that's my wife. Shayla and I watched it. Preston and I were into it and still are. And our original founding member of the podcast, Rob, is from Kentucky. And his grandma knew of the family and took Rob to the house. It's
Nice.
Wild. But what I'm getting at here is Preston and I missed the chance to get a press kit for season 2 because I didn't find out about it on Twitter until like a couple of days after. They said, hey, any podcast want a press kit, we'll send it your way. But I ended up getting one after the fact, and it's this really cool like cassette tape. And then you open up the case and it has a little USB port that comes out of this, faux cassette. And it came with this MP3 recording from Planet Weird called Encounter with an Alien. And it's that full-on audio of that psychiatrist or doctor or whatever it was who's telling you how to kind of chill out and relax and get in this kind of zone and have your own alien contact. And I haven't tried it yet, but it's all about meditation and blah, blah, blah. So I'm curious how that would work, listening to that and then listening to some of those,
I don't trust other people's advice on telling me to enter altered states, because if they're a doctor, where'd they get their degree, and MK Ultra and stuff. Be very careful who you allow to manipulate your mind and give you instructions.
Right. Well, with that also came the video of that full interview they did where they kind of got that guy to make believe that he was a abductee. And that was fucking wild too. So I might shoot you a link so you can check that out if you want. If it sounds like
that sounds cool. Yeah. I like the whole idea because, I mean, especially after DMT, it just kind of confirms suspicions of mine that I see no evidence for a physical alien.
Right. That's what I like about the idea that it's more interdimensional or ultra dimensional versus extraterrestrial.
And see, why does it even have to be that? Why do we have to overcomplicate it? What if it's just a part of the ecosystem?
Yep, exactly. And if you bring it back around to these cave drawings that you saw, I mean, there's documented cave drawings of sky people and all sorts of weird shit, that a lot of cavemen and Aztecs and, all of these earlier civilizations that had contact with these things that, I mean, predates us, so it's hard to deny all that. If you take your tinfoil hat off, it's still hard to deny there's not something there,
Interesting little bit, and I don't want to forget this because I think you'll like it. In the original image of Lom, he doesn't have big black eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has kind of normal small eyes. Bob Lazar said those black things were lenses, remember?
Right.
I've never seen anybody kind of point that out, but I thought, well, maybe Lom just left his glasses.
Left his Oakleys on.
It was something to look into, honestly.
Yeah, for sure, man.
It was kind of an odd thing.
There was an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, and I've got to go down and try to track down what episode it was, but all I remember is watching it with my brother, and I don't know if he's even paying attention or not, but someone gets abducted. They're in a flying saucer.
Kevin said he's fashionably late. He did comment, so Kevin is watching.
Very much so. Yeah. Speaking of the devil. But this episode, he might not even remember this, but there's an episode of Unsolved Mysteries where you have these grays just bebopping down these hallways with like trays of instruments and stuff like that. And at one point, the dude's trying to escape the UFO. And if I remember correctly, one of those things takes off that big old head, and it had a human head underneath it, or at least a humanoid head underneath it. So, I mean, like you said,
it's the whole man.
Right.
That's my theory.
Yeah.
I think all of the Russians literally did ear removals on kids with hydrocephaly to make them look like grays and shot them in rockets and stuff.
Fuck. Yeah.
Like, I think that a lot of the UFO stuff is part of the PSYOP. Yes.
Hell, it could be, man.
I think that the government is the aliens.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think there's room for all of it at the table.
Well, yeah, I just mean you take the head off. You notice some of these people, especially with accounts where they describe some of these instruments, some of them, are kind of cool, but a lot of them are no more different than a dentist pick.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why do they need so many? You think if they could do all this, they could just run a scanner over you and everything's groovy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But hey, and then you have all the people that say the aliens are talking to them, but they don't ever give you anything technological. They just tell you to love your fellow man and let's build this and give me some money.
Right.
And I mean, the only people I know of that run cults like that, Jonestown.
Yeah. Yeah. Was Jonestown, remind me where that was. Was that California, San Francisco?
It started there with Guyana. I knew the sister of one of the helicopter pilots, the first one that flew over and videoed all the mass. But yeah, there's a whole deep rabbit hole y'all could dig through in there. About CIA mind control experiments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sean, Kevin says you're fake news. He doesn't remember anything that you're talking about. And
I've never heard my brother use the phrase fake news.
You need to get your facts straight, bud.
CERN's did it.
Yeah.
We're in one of those alternate Mandela timelines.
Right.
Yeah. Get your shit together, Sean.
Maybe my brother just didn't want to believe, didn't want to remember.
He's working for the man trying to cover it up. Disinformation.
Right. Well, Lazarus, man, I feel like this is just maybe the first of many times we get together and, maybe I'll invest in the pro version of Zoom or like you were mentioning earlier, a different avenue, but we got to jump on and talk some more, buddy, because you got some insight and stories to tell. And I think, this is just the first of many, hopefully.
And you're really upscaling us with that UFO,
Yeah. Like Preston's chubbing up hard seeing this editing capability.
Damn it, we're amateurs. What's
I
going
use
on?
a lot of clips, and I really try to push the line about what's acceptable on my little program.
Yeah. Hey, man, if you're not pushing it to the limits, what are you even doing it
I
for?
think the clips and my gifts are much better than my content.
Hey, there you go. Put them both together, you get a solid C plus. Well, man, we want to thank you for jumping on. Why don't you tell everybody where you can be found, man? You got any? See, look at that, Preston.
God, I know. There it is
Yeah,
again, man.
Preston.
Fucking
What a time to be
amateurs
alive.
over here.
Yeah. Lazarus Corbeaux on YouTube. I run I rebranded my channel as the Dr. Corbeau's Feel Good Fun Time Medicine Show.
I love the
Where
title too.
Yeah, isn't it great? We talk about esoteric subjects, mostly focusing on folk magic, and
Hmm.
I usually get really stoned in the process and try to make it entertaining.
There you go, man. That's all you can do. Our old
Man, he's got
tagline,
dancing Carlson, and all we got is my fucking voice changer. I mean,
we got 6 stock voices on Preston's
Yeah.
OBS.
Yeah.
I don't even have a voice changer yet. I need to
Oh,
get
shit.
one.
We can make quite the Captain Planet if we
Yeah.
put all our powers together. Holy shit.
Wow.
I just thought it'd be good
Yeah, we talk
when
about some
we
weird stuff. I
read
can.
Bigfoot smut. I could actually have a high-pitched voice and make it more authentic.
I got a good Bigfoot story too. Maybe I can find old Neville to tell y'all some. I know a guy that had some Bigfoot and dog men on his property. That dog man stole one of his sheep.
Yeah, you mentioned that too in our
Yeah.
correspondence. Hell yeah, dude. We got to jump
Arkansas's
on that.
wild, man.
Yeah, it really is. From the tip of the Crescent Hotel down to the freaking O. Character, and then it's 10:30 at night, and she's like, y'all listen, if you let me like just break out of this character for a second, I'll give y'all like the deep uncut tour. So anyway, we fast forward, we're down there in the morgue, and she's telling us the story, and we're in the meat locker. And then we turn our flashlights on and we're looking around. And I happen to turn around and shine my flashlight, and boom, there's this face of this middle-aged man just staring at me. And I freaked out and I screamed, and we turn the lights on, and it's a fucking poster of that doctor.
It's haunted as fucking. You know,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
using the old corpse table as the workbench for
Yep.
the maintenance. And you know, Mothman's carved on the fireplace.
Yeah, I had read about
They
that
call
too,
it
man.
the bat owl. Ain't
Yeah.
no bat owl. Good luck for Irish, Scots, Irish people.
It's
That
Mothman on
is
vacation.
Mothman. That's a damn demon. That's all House on Haunted Hill idol stuff, man.
Yep.
No,
yep,
I
that's
think
it.
that's Mothman.
I agree, man. Well, we got about 60 seconds on the ticker tape there. Lazarus, thanks for jumping in.
Thanks
dude.
for having me, man.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for watching us and reaching out and everything, man. And we'll orchestrate some more. And like I said, next time we'll jump on something where we don't have any kind of time limit. We can talk a little bit more because I feel like we can go on for hours just off
Yeah.
this one, buddy. So
I want to hear the dog man story next time. Didn't you say you had
Yeah, no
a
shit.
buddy that encountered a dog man?
Yeah, stole his sheep. He's got casts and all.
yeah.
Like, it's a whole adventure.
Well, we touched on dogmen during one of our episodes where we had raining men and talked about 4 or 5 different, bipedal creatures. We'll do a deeper dive because one of our listener stories coming up is about dogmen as well. So we'll do that. But for now, I think we got just a few minutes. Thanks again, dude. I'll reach out to you here when we're done. And again, we appreciate you jumping on with us, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, man. See
All
ya.
right, brother. Take it easy, man.
Recording stopped.
The cast at Pixelated Paranormal would like to thank you for listening to this week's episode. Pixelated Paranormal is here to tell you tales of the fantastical, the strange, the unknown. Tales that will move you a little further down the paranormal highway. If you'd like to share your own listener story, we would love to hear it. Email us at pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. Again, that's pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. We'd really love to hear from you. Again, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.